Dale, who's got an interview with CLG's top lane tank.
Thanks, guys. Great cast on today. I'm here with Darshan after another win for you guys, 2-0 weekend. Congratulations on that, first off. You know, CLG had a pretty slow start this split. You guys have bounced back. You're now 5-5. How have you guys been working on improving throughout the season, and how's that going for you?
It's been going really well because we kind of were able to sort through all our problems, and it kind of happens where you've been playing with each other so long that you kind of understand a lot about each other. And we had some big problems like at the beginning of the split, and when the split usually starts out, everything's like starting over again. And once we were able to get through that, we started playing more as a team again, like we were last year's spring split at MSI and things like that. And I feel like we're finally back on the right track.
Well, that's got to feel good. You know, Huhi talked this week about you guys focusing too much on what other teams were doing and not focusing enough on what you were doing, what your team needs to do. And you've been playing a lot of different champions lately. You've been having a lot more success. You played Fiora, you played Gangplank, you've been playing the carries and stuff. Is that your game? Is that what you want to get back to, or are you just as happy playing the tanks?
That's definitely part of what I love playing and definitely part of what we'll include in our strategy, but tanks are also really strong, so I feel like we're adaptable. We're able to run any strategy, and I think that's ideally what I want. I want to be able to play carries and tanks really well, and I just want to keep showing that against even the better teams like TSM and Cloud9, and I think we play TSM next week, so...
Yeah, you're going to play them in week 6, I believe, so that should be pretty hype. I'm going to be looking forward to that one. What do you think about Camille in 7.3 now? We've seen it fall completely through some drafts in pick and bans. We've seen some teams still repeatedly banning it out. Do you think that it's still a strong champion and something we'll see in your top lane pool?
Yeah, she's definitely a champion I love playing, and I feel like a lot of top laners don't really play her that well because she was banned so much in solo queue and in competitive, so it's kind of hard to practice her. So I feel like that's why she's still being banned a lot, is because teams are still afraid of that unknown factor. You haven't really played around her much, so I feel like you'll be seeing her more and more as the season goes on, but for now, she's going to still be being banned a lot.
All right, so last question. You talked about getting back to that MSI form of last year. Are we guys going to see you guys make it all the way back to MSI again this year?
Definitely, that's the plan.
All right, well, thank you very much, Darshan. Congratulations on the win. 5-5 after this week. We'll send it back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you very much, Azael. Darshan, happy with the improvements that CLG as a team has made here throughout the split. And with this victory, they moved to 5-5. So a bit of a resurgence for them here, approaching that, or rather crossing that midway point of the split.
Kind of miraculous, because we spent the whole first 3 or 4 weeks of the season being like, when's CLG going to turn it on? You can't just turn it on like that. And then they haven't actually even looked that great in a lot of their games. But as you say, you look up just past the halfway point of the season, they're in position to make the playoffs, and everything seems okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like they're not pretty wins, but they're all wins, and it's like we were saying in the previous game, like an improvement isn't overnight. Usually, you're going to look good sometimes, not look so hot some other times, and so bloody games, but they are winning.
Right, yeah, I mean, they went from losing in ugly games to now winning in ugly games. The next step will be winning in super clean games. Yeah. This one being one of the cleaner that they've put together and more dominant so far.
Yeah. Kinda. When you get out of like the first 15 minutes, because the first 15 minutes was like all trade kills all over the place out of both teams, and then eventually CLG started getting further and further ahead off the fight.
Right. Okay. Well, let's take a look at it, because it was around that 20-minute mark, 5 minutes beyond that 15, that CLG turns a 4-for-0 plus the Baron. That'll give them full control.
Right. And this is just a case of blowing way too much on the support. You see them use multiple ultimates, especially Golden Glues, when the guy's gonna go down no matter what. And it'd be really nice to have an Orianna ult here to kind of zone out the chasing Huhi and Darshan, who are basically given free access because there's no zoning potential.
Yeah, and Huhi lives for these kind of fights where he can enter when the main CCs have already been blown. So even though he takes a Piglet Q, the chase is just easy for them. They can walk straight through the Echo Shield. And really, when Darshan is on Maokai, the team just seems to click so well. Stixxay actually ultimates this late into the fight, and it allows, as Piglet tries to tank the 4th shot, just kind of lines up perfectly for the extra kills.
Yep, and CLG will be going to be happy with the victory, moving to that even score record in week 5. And now it's about, hey, we've got 2 weeks to week 6, right? It's a nice little break for us to go kind of look under the hood, retool as much as we need to, and diagnose, all right, what's the next step to becoming, a top-tier team, a top 4, top 3, top 2 team, as opposed to sitting mid-pack.
Exactly, and CLG has been through this many times before, especially with this roster. We just heard Darshan talking about it. They've been together for so long. And I think a lot of times, since we are kind of forced to analyze week to week, it's so hard to take a big picture. We're incredibly impatient about improvement.
Yes.
When if you consider sports in general, it's like multi-year improvements for a lot of these players, learning how to play new champions. Darshan's Maokai has been great this year. 2 years ago, this dude couldn't play tanks at all.
Exactly.
So it takes a really long time to do some stuff like this. And I'm not saying CLG is going to be able to do it, but it gives them more time, which is what they need.
Right, and there's always patch changes and things like that as well. So you have to consider that where now they have an extra couple weeks to play on this patch. It seems like it's given a couple teams some issue where they don't look quite like their old selves.
It's kind of a strange dichotomy. Improvement takes time, and yet the game is evolving at a 2-week rate.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, try and balance both these things. It really puts into perspective how difficult the job is of a pro player to stay at the highest level.
Which is one thing that I think CLG may know almost better than anyone else, because they seem so calm and collected when they're getting blasted.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are willing to panic. Be like, nah, the game goes in cycles. It ebbs and flows. We'll be fine.
Yeah, the amount of players you see on the player cam after a bad player, they're like freaking out.
oh,
And
I'm never
CLG is
gonna
just
recover
like,
from this.
darn it. Get it next time.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get him next time. Darshan going to pick up player of the game. You mentioned his prowess on Maokai, in particular, this split and kind of the allowances that it gives the team. Helps him out in the team fights. Next up, we're going to look at Stixxay. I mean, he was only 30 damage behind Stixxay on a Maokai, which is pretty astronomical in the team fight victory there. Now let's talk about Team Liquid. 2-8.
Mark?
Still can't get it together.
So we might have
What
been
the
talking
heck?
about.
Is your specialty talking about why Team Liquid
Come on,
is doing poorly?
We talk about how, improvement comes with time, and, it's not always right to panic.
How much
Things
time
don't
does
look
Team
right.
Liquid need?
So I was about to say,
Is
with
it
Team
time to
Liquid,
panic?
it's time to start worrying, because it's the same story every weekend where it's like, oh, this thing looks a little bit better, and then this thing comes off the rails. Like, yeah, Piglet looked better this week. He had a couple better carry performances on non-meta champions, but the rest of the team still doesn't look good. Reignover, once he gets pushed off Graves, feels terrible.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Golden Glue, though?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think it's time to talk about, I mean, we've talked about it before, but I think now it's time to seriously talk about, you either need to make a change in the mid lane, it feels to me, bringing Link, officially bringing like Link in, or picking somebody else up, because I am not seeing how this guy becomes the reason that Team Liquid. Exactly.
Right? And I kind of agree with you in the sense that it's time to panic, but you compare Golden Glue's reactions after dying to like Aphromoo. Like, it is the complete opposite.
Yeah,
These are the two ends of the spectrum. TL does not take their losses well.
No.
And you wonder when that help is on the way thing is going to happen, because they already had their cathartic 3-hour conversation with tears and redo things 2 or 3 weeks ago. Like, what's next?
They would do that again, right?
They already got rid of
Link, never have
right?
too many team
Golden
meetings.
Glue doesn't actually have a backup mid laner on the roster, because
That's right, they got rid of Link.
This guy who has been dying a bunch in the mid lane, his backup is actually off the team. So they doubled down on saying, Golden Glue, you're our guy. But there's no one else out there, right? They're already using both their import slots. They have the support sub Conquan, who hasn't even been playing the game for the last few months, and they're thinking maybe they could put him in for Matt. It's troubling for these guys, but you almost want to try and double down on Reignover and find ways to play around
I was
him.
just about to say, this is almost going to bring a lot of attention onto that acquisition, saying, okay, you got a huge pickup in Reignover in the offseason, but what did you sacrifice in all of your other lanes in order to have that be your secondary import?
I mean, you could also look at Piglet the same way, because between the two, I mean, Reignover like consistently can get CS leads.
On Graves.
No, he gets CS leads on everything, I think. His playmaking on Graves is just really good. On the other, Rengar and Kha'Zix, he seems to struggle, but he doesn't go out and just like make horrendous plays completely on his own. He does miss a lot of stuff. Like, there was a game yesterday on Rengar where he could have potentially got a double kill if he just pressed Q one more time, didn't do it. So, I mean, the whole team.
I know we're getting hung up on it, but the reason I bring that up is, I mean, look at the drop-off between Reignover and the next best NA jungler, somebody that wouldn't take up an import slot, and then the difference between Golden Glue and the best import mid laner that you can get. And that's where I'm saying people might start to look at Team Liquid with criticism towards that acquisition, saying, hey, good on you for getting what is the most, sought-after jungler, but what did you throw away?
Yeah, there's a lot of fingers to point, right? When you're at a 2-8 team tied for last place. And it is obviously really hard to dissect exactly what's happening. From talking with any of those guys, like, Reignover isn't the Reignover he was last year, but he doesn't feel like the problem for this team, for sure. He's definitely underperforming. The champion pool is going to be different. 2 weeks from now, different patches. I don't think jungle is going to stay in the super carry point that it is right now.
Right.
And I think that benefits Reignover, because he is super good at almost just controlling the map and helping teammates rather than being the guy that gets all the kills. So it could get better for Team Liquid, but it's not looking
It could. We'll have to see. Do you have a final point here?
I would just say that metas can help your team a lot. They rarely turn a team from bottom of the table to great. So, I mean, you have to measure your expectations. We're like, oh, man, if we just get a tank jungle, meta and an 80 carry meta, then we're the best team in the league. It's like, that's not going to happen.
Well, you know what? 2 weeks time for both of these teams to go figure out what it is they want to do on the back half of the split. But CLG evening up their record 5-5 with the victory today. Time now for us to throw you over to NA LCS 1, where C9 and Phoenix 1 are